Magnetism and its influence on the human body is an area of growing interest in alternative health care, how magnetic energy can relieve chronic pain and fatigue, arthritis, etc. When was it determined that magnetic fields had any influence on the body?
Well, it's recorded back 4000 BC in the books of the Yellow Emperor of China that they were using magnetism, mesmer, and later on in Europe, all people using magnetism. The Chinese have been using magnetism for centuries.
And scientific study?
And what scientific studies are there?
Yeah.
Well, electromagnetism, pulsed electromagnetic fields are, there's two devices approved, the PEMF device, which is pulsed electromagnetic field device, and the TENS device, which are both FDA approved and Canada Food and Drug approved for curing different problems.
But I thought there were a group of Japanese doctors in the 50s who identified a problem of deprivation from magnetic energy?
Yeah, they found something similar to our chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, this problem, and they call it magnetic deficiency syndrome. And they treated it with the use of magnets. And that kind of started the magnetic industry in Japan, and it's a huge industry today.
And also, I guess, one of the other famous test cases or studies is when humans have gone into space for a long time.
Yeah, that's probably the most telling. When the cosmonauts are out in space, the first time out, they lost, they were over a year out in space, and they lost 80% of their bone density just from being out of the Earth's magnetic field. They're still in the sun's magnetic field. And but that problem was solved by a scientist from Markham, Ontario, who said, look, the only thing you don't have is 50% of the time you don't have a strong enough magnetic field. And so he designed a magnetic generator for their next space capsule, and they lost no bone density when they went out the second time.
So does every person who's going in space for a long time now have some kind of...
That's right. The cosmonauts are primarily the only ones that have been out in space for long periods of time. The Americans are only out there for short periods, which the brain makes up the difference with its electromagnetic field.
But if you were in a room completely deprived of any magnetic energy or any magnetic fields,
what would happen?
what would happen?
Valerie Hunt of UCLA asked that question, so she had the physics department make a mu cage. Mu metal will blank out magnetic fields. And so she put two subjects in this cage. It was 7 by 7 and had them all wired. And guess what she found? In a few minutes they began to sob uncontrollably. And she said, can't you stop crying? And they said, no, we feel like we're falling apart. And a few minutes more, all the alarm bells start going off because they begin to lose all their muscle control. And so she had to take them out of the cage and discontinue the experiment. Well, that shows how important magnetism is to life.
And yet, the magnetic field that the Earth influences us with has been decreasing. But I mean, it's a staggering amount. It's decreased like 90%.
In the last 4,000 years.
Well, I know it's a long time, but I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah, but NASA announced in September that we're going to have no more magnetic field within 800 years. Now, you say, well, I don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to live that long. But the problem is that now we're in a deficient magnetic field, and supplementation is becoming necessary.
But hasn't the body adapted or altered so that it's
apparently
not
not.
as necessary?
Apparently not. We're having more and more chronic diseases, such as chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, which there isn't good answers for. And
well, there aren't good answers for, and I guess that's why, I mean, some people might be suspicious and say, well, it's all well and good to say, you know, then it's magnets, because they're all things that seem...
Well, Valerie, we did a double-blind study here 2 years ago on fibromyalgia and magnetic fields. Now, using a very, very light magnetic field, only 4 times what the Earth is presently now, we had a 3 times greater improvement in their results than the placebos. So that shows that, and a lot of people will respond. A lot of people say, oh, fibromyalgia is all in their head. But in this, the people with a proper magnetic field had 3 times the results of those with the placebos. And so we know that there is an effect.
Is there a growth in this industry?
Oh, it's a phenomenal growth. Like I just mentioned, the Japanese company who is growing phenomenally.
Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
This is Prime 9 News at 9. Southern California's most honored newscast.
Plus, we've heard how herbs and oils may ease pain, but who ever heard of magnets? They are attracting a lot of attention. Ahead, how they could help you. We go now from the frontiers of science to an old folk remedy. The next time you feel pain in your back, Pull a magnet off the refrigerator and lay it on the sore area. May sound silly, but some doctors swear by it. Our Sylvia Gambardella has more.
I know you have pain in the thumb.
Yes.
Mary Jane Phillips of Los Angeles has arthritis in her hand. She is treating it with a magnet.
When I put the magnet on, it relieves the pain. And after tennis, it helps quite a bit. And then when I iron or do housework, whatever.
Mary Jane tried traditional painkillers, but they didn't work. So she turned to Dr. Ronald Lawrence of Agora Hills.
You've been using this for about how long now?
About 6 months.
About 6 months, right. And have you found it to be helpful now? Is it helping you?
It alleviates the pain.
We don't know the mechanisms yet. We can hypothesize. We can make very educated guesses to how a magnet produces its effect. We know, for example, that we measure increased blood flow almost immediately after a magnet is placed in position. So increasing blood flow helps with all pain-type problems.
The gauze from the magnet penetrates deep into our body tissue to reduce pain.
It's a lot like we live. Without magnetism, we'd all be dead, because basically we have a 0.7 gauze.
Magnets were used as far back as Plato's time to heal gout and muscle spasms. Today they are a traditional part of treatment throughout the world in civilized societies, except America. Why has there been so much resistance in traditional medicine to accept this kind of therapy?
We always have a problem, God bless them, with the drug industry. They feel threatened.
But like any holistic approach to medicine, those who see positive results are true believers that it works. Sylvia Gambardella, Channel 9 News.
About treating pain. Tonight's health report. Tonight, what you and professional athletes may have in common, especially the day after a weekend. The answer is aches and pains. And tonight's report is about what has been called a secret weapon to deal with them.
Dolphin quarterback Dan Marino used one to heal his fractured ankle. Yankee center fielder Bernie Williams had one strapped to his pulled hamstring. And pro golfer Bob Murphy sports them all over his body. And it's becoming the hottest treatment for world-class athletes and weekend warriors. There are magnets for your feet, magnets for your neck, and they can cost up to $89 a piece.
Magnetic force that allows changes in the tissue.
Magnets are another form of electric energy that we now think has a very powerful effect on bodies.
The one area scientists do agree on is that magnets create a weak electrical charge, which in theory increases blood flow to an injured area, decreasing pain, reducing swelling, and some say speeding recovery. Juju Chang, ABC News, New York.